Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And we are currently following a imperative of ours to do a faction focus for every single faction in Warhammer 40k 10th edition to cover the index releases. Sort of a short and sweet slice of each faction to give you a flavor pitch, some rules examples, and let you know if maybe a faction that you're sort of on the fence on is for you, or maybe not. And today we're going to be talking about an interesting faction. There are a number of factions in Warhammer 40k that I would say are quite unique to 40k, but the AdMech, or the Adeptus Mechanicus in long form, are one of the more unique ones aesthetically. Because boy howdy, they got the aesthetic.
Yeah, like the drip on these robot boys is unparalleled. The cloaks, the hoods, the super fancy looking guns that look like they're from Red Dead Redemption 2 meets like diesel punk.
I was just gonna say, it's sort of like steampunky, dieselpunky goodness as opposed to like futuristic, smooth cyborg limbs and stuff.
Yeah, it's super, super rad.
And it all ties into their story rather nicely, which for us, we feel is really important for every single one of these factions, because we are fluff players, we find. And if we don't like the lore for a faction, it usually means we're not going to like the rules either.
Yeah.
So we really like to start each of these with just a pitch for the fluff, because it kind of sets your mind, and if it's something you might be into, or if you're just going to listen along for fun. And for the AdMech, you kind of have to understand a little bit about the world around them that led to their creation, which very quickly is that Warhammer 40k is a timeline that is obviously 40,000 years into the future of humanity. And there were events that occurred before the modern setting. And humanity at one point was living the high life and had AI and robots and all sorts of incredible technologies and intelligences to work alongside us and do work for us, until eventually it all went terribly.
Yeah, horribly wrong.
It was
kind of like late 2010 vehicle motors in modern day.
Yeah, I can't help but picture like Terminator, but you know, long story short, whether there were silver androids or not, the machines turned on the humans and almost eliminated us. But there was not nearly as much Arnold Schwarzenegger, and therefore it's a terrible dark timeline. Humanity made it out, but barely. Just barely. And since then, our technology has actually been in decline for thousands and thousands of years. And so much so that as the Imperium sort of descended into religious fervency and it infected every aspect of Imperial life, it did the same for the machinists and led to the AdMech. Because, to be honest, while the Imperium has incredible war machines, very few people know how they work. Not really. Not truly.
Yeah.
The AdMech view it as a religious experience rather than like a mechanical one, usually.
Yeah, they don't crack open a user manual and go, oh, the glove box, I just press this button and if I like pop this, I can pull the air filter out. No. They're like, in order to open the special glove box compartment, I have to sacrifice 17 goats upon a hill.
Yes.
Like,
it's rough.
It's absurd.
The one that we think of is like a mystical oil change ritual that they would probably call the letting of the black blood. That like you must kneel by the machine, which they believe has a spirit in it, and say the magic incant, and then grab the receptacle of shame and put it underneath of it and loosen the restraining relic, pull it out.
We must absolve the Toyota Camry's sins. The machine spirit must be cleansed.
And then it belches.
It's been 10,000 miles.
It belches its shame as you flagellate yourself You return the relic, you fill it with more black blood of cleansing, and then you're done, and you've done a holy ritual. But actually, you've done an oil change. Like, in the end, they did complete an oil change, but all the other stuff, not to their knowledge, unnecessary. But the dogma and the ritual around these holy machines is what keeps them able to be worked on, and what gives the Admech their want to find these machines at any cost. Because for them, it's not just prudent to find lost, powerful technology, it is a religious crusade. They must find and recover it. They believe that the spirits in them want to be recovered, and the mechanical god they worship wants them to do so.
Yes, there's these things in Warhammer 40k called STCs, which are like standard template constructs, which are very massive, like
3D printers, essentially.
3D printers, yeah, for creating specific objects. So you might find an STC for like a specific kind of combat knife. Well, that is now the best combat knife in existence because it's like super technology combat knife. And we can now make 10 billion of them.
Or tanks, like, or, you know, trucks, or whatever. Every one is a gold mine.
Like one of the things that, if you've been playing 40k for a while, Terminator armor, pretty recognizable for everyone, originally was just mining suits that they attached guns to put the level of technology into understanding.
That was the throwaway blue-collar trash. And now revered. We are that far down, and the Admech are trying to fix it with their crusade. And they show their fervency by working on machines, but also replacing much of their organic body parts with machines as much as is possible. As they say, the flesh is weak. And they look to reject their horrible organic body by using tech and customizing themselves. And this gives them access to a number of cool strategies in war and the fluff that also make it over to the tabletop that other sane organic armies would not take part in for pretty practical purposes. And that's things like radiation. Even their basic rifles have irradiated bullets or fire Volkite weaponry that would kill their user from heat if any organic dared touch them. But if everyone is a cyborg, well, that's maybe not a problem. And it translates to their rules sort of straightforward. First things first is through the robot-y bits. They go to war in a very regimented way, and that's through these imperatives that are beamed to their skulls.
Yeah, and those are called Doctrina imperatives, and they're like direct beamed emails directly into your eyeballs that force themselves open. It's a horror, I know, it's terrifying. This whole setting is just a nightmare all the way down. But this basically works as a rule that you pick at the beginning of each battle round that you want your whole army to have. You either want to have the Protector Imperative or the Conqueror Imperative. Protector Imperative will give you your weapons the heavy ability, which allows them to become more accurate if you stand still, which you're going to do if you're like defending. And it worsens AP against you by 1, which is really good for being defensive.
Incredible. That's quite good.
Yeah, and then the Conqueror one instead allows for you to kind of push out and take objectives once you've like allowed something to break against your wall. And that's will give you the Assault rule on your ranged weapons, and it improves your armor penetration by 1 to kind of like make some plays and some moves.
Also, gosh, those are great buffs. AP is very rare in this edition, and being able to get a bonus AP across the whole force is, boy howdy, quite compelling.
Very good.
That's a great buff. And then we come into the war crime section of the show.
Oh, yeah, my favorite bit. Tell me all about the war crimes.
Yeah, their detachment is called a Rad Cohort. They get an ability called Rad Bombardment.
Oh, cool. Just gonna mustard gas everybody.
Yeah.
But worse.
Yeah, this is the Fallout 3 Megaton special. It is on the screen. There's a lot of text, but it's fairly simple. In round 1, you bombard your opponent's deployment zone with radiation. And for every one of their units, they get to make a choice to either take cover or stand firm. If your opponent's unit decides to take cover, they end up being battle shocked, which means they can't hold objectives, and they can't be targeted with stratagems. But if they stand firm, you roll a d6, and on a 3-up, they take d3 mortal wounds from the radiation. And then from battle round 2 onwards, you roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within their deployment zone still, and on a 3+, they take 1 mortal wound. They don't get a chance to not take the chance of being irradiated. So what it really does is, 1, mess with your opponent's plan turn 1, potentially, of trying to score objectives, which in an objective-based game could be interesting. But secondarily, it adds some pressure on them to try to move out and come towards your gun line, largely.
Yeah, and like if they do choose to stay and be battle shocked in the first round and like not take the wounds, which most people would just do, like, oh no, I'm battle shocked. Oh, you can't hold objectives and you can't use stratagems. I think that if it was just you couldn't hold objectives, some people would just be like, I'll eat it. But the not using stratagems part really, really punishes some people.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of factions that utilize those like stratagems to do a alpha strike,
Especially early.
So it's
yeah.
it immediately messes with your opponent's plans. It's a very good universal ability, and you don't really need to build around it at all.
It's just gonna happen.
Just let it happen, and then build an army that does its own thing.
Which I think is interesting, and it kind of shows how AdMech work on their own sort of mechanical cohorts rather than some big harmonious whole. And I think we kind of see that in the data sheets. There are more of them than I expected, to be honest. But we, on the show, do not like to go through all of them. I think it would just be a little too grinding, and instead, we want to pick one apiece that we feel is representative of the faction and kind of shows you what they're about, and then use that as a way to maybe spark your interest so that you could go look at the others yourself. John, who are you picking as sort of your representative for AdMech?
So I'm picking a leader, and he's sort of unique compared to other factions. A lot of leaders kind of provide a buff or a lot of ability to fight. Very rarely do they have the ability to like shoot. And the Tech Priest Manipulus is my choice. Right over here. He's a big lad, full of robot parts, and he's not very tough, but three things kind of stand out to me. A, he can go into almost every unit you would ever want him to be in the entire faction. So he's a great like first pick for a power pair.
Yeah, that's a nice flexibility. I find the more I'm trying to think of lists, sometimes I get a hero that's cool, but they only go in 1 or 2 units, and it lowers their flexibility when sometimes their playability. Not the case here.
Yeah, this guy is very good in all sorts of units. His range weapon is no slouch, so it already has heavy, so you don't need the protector imperative, and it has 36-inch range, so he can be like pretty far out.
Most of the board. Yeah.
And still do this. And yeah, it only has 1 attack. You're hitting on 3s, but if you don't move, you're now hitting on 2s. And strength 7, which means most, even like heavy infantry, are going to be wounded on 3s or higher, which is really good. Minus 2 AP, which means most of that heavy infantry would be down to a 4 or a 5-up armor save, or just their involve. And they just does 3 damage. So like he has a good ability to just kill a heavy infantry.
He could kill a Terminator. Like that's
just
not bad.
Boom. And that I think that is strictly a bonus, because his 2 abilities are really what you're bringing him for. Lethal hits to the unit he's in, really good, especially if you have something with high rate of fire like Cataphrons, right? Or can you go in Castellans? You might be able to go in Castellans. Anyways, you pick something with a high rate of fire, and all of a sudden you're just pumping out wounds, even high toughness things. And the second thing is a once per battle, activate it, and you give that whole unit a 4-up involve. So if you know that unit's going to get shot to pieces this next turn, or fought, like about to be in combat, you can give him a 4 pinball to try to save him. That's very good.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, like I think that he is a good, well-rounded pick for whatever your mission is, because you always want to be able to defend during Protector Imperative, and you always want to be able to go out and swing with lethal hits.
Yeah. And I think trying to take advantage of those imperatives is and also the buffs that they give you is one of the things you have to look at these war scrolls in mind with. And I think that does kind of change the math on some of the like heroes and whatnot. And it would probably be sensible for me to talk about one of the heroes, but to hell with that. We're talking about the AdMech. I'm gonna pick a robot. I gotta pick a robot. Why would I not pick a robot in the robot army? Y'all, I'm putting them on the screen. They're Castellan robots, or as I call them, 1950s sci-fi space robots. They're so charming, these little titans that could. I have liked them for multiple editions. I just think they're sweet. But in this edition, they've gotten a little bit of a glow up, and I'm a big fan. One, look at the stat line. Like, compared to the hero, which was kind of, so-so. Toughness 9, still moves 6 inches, 2 up save base, 7 wounds per robot. Leadership.
There's a tiny tank.
Yeah, they are. They're walking M1 Abrams, which is delightful. So they are tough as a coffin nail, and still move fairly quickly. And then also, the actual base weapons they come with, not bad at all. And you got a number of weapon options you can sort of play and kit them out with depending on what you want them to do. But all of them are rocking Strength 6 at minimum. Most of them have at least -1 AP as well. You add buffs onto that, it's even better. In melee, their twin Castellan fists are Strength 12. Good God. And AP -2, damage 3. I mean, they're mulching Terminators with that sort of stat line. That's the kind of power. And at Strength 12, they could even really hurt vehicles. And if that was all they had, that would probably be enough. But the real thing they're here for is that they are a great bodyguard unit for one particular model that is supposed to go with them and gives them even more buffs. And while they're bodyguarding for him, their hero is going to get a 4-up field O pain. That means 50% of the wounds that hero would take, they just do not take. That's really nice. And then,
especially against sniper rifles, like
precision. Yeah, that's what I think of. Is there's going to be a lot of precision running around for people trying to kill your heroes. These robots just ain't going to allow it. And secondarily, they are very, very tanky, but they also do a cute thing that I haven't seen many other units do this edition with Repulsor Grid. So when they get attacked, they roll their saves, and if they roll 6s to save, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But like, that's fun.
Yeah, especially if they're kind of shooting at them with a weight of dice. You know, like a ricochet of like 20 last gun shots or whatever. You're bound to hit a couple of 6 and just kill guys on ricochet.
It's just hilarious.
It's so dumb, and it's so great. I'm a huge fan of the little robots. And again, they have a number of weapon options. So if you want them to, you know, be flamethrower dudes, get really close up in the mix, they got options. You want them to shoot from further back with phosphorus, they got that too. I think they're really cool. And they are, you know, whereas the hero John showed is sort of the part that might want to play it a little safe and hang back in the gun line. This is the front of the gun line.
Yeah, like this is the wall at which the enemy army breaks. Like even like world leaders charging this is going to have a tough time chewing through all that robot.
At least in time to avoid the shooting, which is really what you're doing, is buying time.
I'm just imagining the Castellan robot with like different emoji faces popping on its head.
Yeah.
And like picking up a world leader berserker who's just screaming like a cat you just picked up by its scruff. Just and he just, I hope you have a good day. Slams him into the dirt. Like,
it's perfect. I love them. I'm satisfied with my care. And see, John, that's referential.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think AdMech are a very flavorful army. And again, armies like this that are super flavorful, like the AdMech or the Sisters of Battle, are not for everyone. But there are always going to be people who look at them and just go, I need it. And if you're one of them people, no shame. They're a cool force. They've got a lot of really modern models that look great. They are not suffering from being an old line or anything. The models are top tier. And there is quite a lot of bench for you to work through in this release. But they are a bit of a complicated force, and we want to leave you with some tips before you go, if you are interested in AdMech, to help you learn to play the force, or maybe to start your first force and you have your first games go a little smoother for you. John, if you were going to have one tip, what would it be?
So my tip is to pick units that fit either the Conqueror Imperative or the Protector Imperative, or have the flexibility to be in both, and position them accordingly. So like if you know that you really want to have the Protector Imperative be like the thing you're doing turn 1, you're going to rapid bombardment them and have them move forward towards you. Make sure you bring like Castellan robots, because you're going to be able to use that like reduced AP in coming to you to keep them alive, to continue being the trains that they are later to just run over the enemy. The other direction, though, you have the Conqueror Imperative. So things like the flamethrower horses.
Yeah.
Like the flamethrower horses probably use the Conqueror Imperative really well. The flying dudes.
Yep.
Vanguard. Like other things that want to push up onto objectives are really going to want to take advantage of the Conqueror Imperative. And you're probably going to want to keep them back while your Protective Imperative guys are kind of using it in the forward. Not to say that those units can't keep the rules from Protector Imperative, but they will benefit more from Conqueror.
Yeah. Mine is simple, but I think very key. We've mentioned it before, but I'm going to reiterate again. This is a largely gunline force, and when you are playing a gunline, you need to have defensive bulwarks.
Yes.
Or otherwise, your soft, squishy, high-damage gunline units are going to get blendered or threatened by something.
Dumping 60 shots downrange is super cool, but can you take getting punched by like a melee hammer?
Yeah, you've got to have stuff to stop them from being threatened, and keep that in mind when you're building your force. Think of them sort of like, your damage dealers and your anvils, and you've got to have both. And I think if you do that, you're going to have a pretty good time. I mean, we've seen it work before. It's classic. It's got to be great. John, any final parting words on the AdMech?
Be careful with those toasters. And, unplug your appliances when you're not using them. There's a pro AdMech tip.
Some people are out there laughing, others are confused, and I'm going to leave it that way for them. If you're into AdMech and you've got some more questions about where that reference comes from, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below or send it to us on social media. It's all open in there. Or if you're watching the series and you're not super into the AdMech holy oil changers, maybe stick around and watch some other videos. Hopefully one of those works for you better than this one does. For now, that's been all of our opinions, bona fide, and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next one.